I still remember the exact moment my life cracked open. It was a quiet Tuesday morning in our kitchen in Austin, Texas. The kind of calm morning that feels ordinary, safe, predictable. Sunlight poured through the wide glass windows above the sink, painting golden lines across the marble counter. The smell of fresh pancakes filled the air while coffee steamed gently in the mug beside me. My 4-year-old son, Ethan, sat at the table, swinging his tiny legs under the chair, humming a cartoon-themed song. Across from him sat my wife, Lily. She looked perfect that morning, her blonde hair tied loosely in a messy bun, wearing one of my oversized gray hoodies. She looked like the same woman I had fallen in love with 8 years ago. But what Ethan said next destroyed everything. He looked up at Lily with innocent curiosity and asked, "Mommy, when is that funny uncle coming again?" My hand froze midair while pouring syrup onto Ethan's pancake. The kitchen suddenly felt different. Lily blinked. "Funny uncle," she said, forcing a small laugh. "What funny uncle, sweetie?" Ethan giggled. "The one who comes when Daddy goes to work." The syrup bottle slipped from my fingers and rolled across the counter with a hollow thud. For a moment, nobody spoke. The only sound was the faint ticking of the wall clock. Tick, tick, tick. I slowly turned my head toward Lily. Her face had lost all color. "Ethan," she said quickly, her voice too cheerful, too forced, "you're probably talking about Uncle Mark. Remember, Daddy's friend." Ethan shook his head while chewing. "No, not Uncle Mark." He pointed his sticky fork at her. "The funny uncle, the one who brings Mommy flowers." My stomach twisted. "Flowers?" I stared at Lily. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Instead, she stood up abruptly and grabbed Ethan's plate. "Okay, breakfast is over. Eat fast, we're getting late for preschool." Her voice trembled, but the damage was already done. And something inside my chest began to sink. Slowly, quietly, like a stone dropped into deep water. For the rest of that morning, my mind refused to stay calm. Maybe Ethan misunderstood. Kids say random things all the time. Right. But the words kept echoing in my head. The funny uncle. The one who comes when Daddy goes to work. I tried to shake it off as I drove to my office downtown. Traffic crawled along Interstate 35 while my thoughts raced much faster. Lily wasn't like that. She couldn't be. We had built everything together. 8 years of marriage. 10 years of knowing each other. A house in a quiet suburb. A beautiful little boy. A life that people envied. At least, that's what I believed. But something about her reaction at breakfast kept replaying in my mind. The way her hands trembled. The way she avoided looking at me. The way she rushed Ethan away. By the time I reached my office building, my chest felt tight. I work as a financial consultant for a mid-size firm. Normally, I'm the calm, logical type. Numbers make sense. Data tells the truth. But that morning, I couldn't focus on anything. Emails blurred together. Reports made no sense. Every few minutes, Ethan's innocent voice echoed again. "Mommy, when is that funny uncle coming again?" Around 10:30 a.m., I finally gave up pretending to work. Instead, I opened our home security app. 3 years earlier, I had installed cameras around the house after a burglary in our neighborhood. Mostly outside, driveway, backyard, front door. But there was one inside camera. The living room. We had originally set it up as a baby monitor when Ethan was younger. I hadn't checked it in months. My fingers hovered over the screen. I felt stupid. Paranoid. Like one of those jealous husbands in bad TV dramas. Still, I tapped the playback button. The timeline opened. I scrolled to Monday afternoon. 12:05 p.m. The living room appeared on screen. Empty. Sunlight streamed through the big windows. The couch sat exactly where it always was, toys scattered across the rug. For several minutes, nothing happened. I almost closed the app. Then at 12:17 p.m., the front door opened. My heart stopped. Lily walked inside. She wasn't supposed to be home yet. She had told me she was meeting a friend for lunch. She looked around the room quickly. Then she walked toward the camera. For a terrifying second, I thought she saw it. But instead, she just adjusted her hair in the reflection of the TV screen. Then she walked back toward the door and opened it again. Someone stepped inside. A man. The camera only caught his back at first. Tall, dark hair, broad shoulders. He was holding something. Flowers. Bright red roses. Exactly like Ethan described. My hands started shaking. The man turned slightly as he handed the flowers to Lily. And I felt the air leave my lungs. I recognized him instantly. Ryan. My neighbor. The guy who lived 3 houses down. The same guy who had barbecues with us. The same guy who had held Ethan on his shoulders during the 4th of July fireworks. The same guy I had trusted enough to give our spare house key once when we went on vacation. On the screen, Lily laughed. A soft, intimate laugh I hadn't heard in months. Ryan stepped closer. Too close. His hand brushed her cheek. And then, he kissed her. Right there. In my living room. In my house. My stomach twisted so violently, I thought I might throw up. But the worst part hadn't even come yet. Because a few seconds later, from down the hallway, a tiny voice appeared. Mommy, the funny uncle is here. Ethan ran into the living room. Smiling. Happy. Like this was completely normal. Like this man had been there many times before. Ryan picked him up easily and spun him around. Hey buddy, he said. Lily didn't stop him. She didn't look guilty. She didn't look afraid. She looked comfortable. Like this was part of their routine. Like my son knew him. Better than he should. I sat frozen at my desk, staring at the screen. My entire life suddenly felt like a lie. And deep inside my chest, something cold and quiet began to grow. Not sadness. Not shock. Something darker. Something patient. Because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. If my 4-year-old son thought this man visiting my wife was normal, then this betrayal had been happening for a very long time. And Lily had no idea that I had just discovered everything. I don't remember how long I sat there staring at my phone. Minutes. Maybe longer. The video kept looping in my head like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Ryan lifting Ethan. Lily smiling at him. The kiss. That casual, comfortable kiss, like they had done it 100 times before. My chest felt hollow. But strangely, I didn't explode. I didn't call Lily. I didn't storm home. Instead, something colder settled inside me. The kind of calm that only comes when something inside you finally breaks. I closed the security app slowly and placed the phone face down on my desk. Across the office, coworkers chatted and laughed like it was any normal Tuesday. But my entire world had just collapsed. And nobody knew. By noon, I had made a decision. I needed to know how long this had been happening. Because the worst part about betrayal isn't always the act itself. It's the lies that surround it. The fake smiles. The fake I love you. The fake life. So I opened the security app again. This time I scrolled back further. Sunday. Saturday. Friday. Each time I watched the same pattern unfold. Around noon, Lily would come home. 10 to 15 minutes later, Ryan would arrive. Sometimes with flowers. Sometimes with takeout food. Once with a bottle of wine. Each time they kissed like lovers who had been waiting all morning to see each other. Each time Ethan ran into the living room, excited to see the funny uncle. The deeper I went into the recordings, the heavier my chest felt. Because Ethan didn't look confused. He didn't look surprised. He looked familiar with Ryan. Comfortable. Like this man was part of his daily life. And that realization hit harder than the cheating itself. My son had been exposed to this. My son had been taught, without understanding, that another man visiting mommy when daddy wasn't home was normal. I rubbed my face slowly. 8 months. That's how far back the recordings went. 8 months of visits. 8 months of lies. 8 months of Lily kissing me goodbye in the morning, and kissing Ryan in my living room an hour later. At some point, my hand stopped shaking. Instead, my mind started working. Calm. Precise. Logical. Just like it did with financial strategy. Because emotions make people reckless. But patience. Patience wins wars. At exactly 3:15 p.m., my phone buzzed. Lily. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before answering. Hey, I said. My voice sounded normal. Almost too normal. Hi, babe, she said warmly. How's work? I leaned back in my chair. Busy. Ethan had a great day at preschool, she said casually. We're heading home now. I imagined Ryan sitting in my living room earlier that afternoon. Maybe on my couch. Maybe drinking from my coffee mugs. Maybe touching my wife in the same house where my son played with toy dinosaurs. My jaw tightened. Sounds good, I said calmly. There was a small pause. Then she asked, You'll be home around 6. Yeah. Okay, she said softly. Dinner will be ready. Dinner? The word almost made me laugh. But I held it in. See you then. When the call ended, I stared out the office window at the city skyline. Austin looked peaceful. Normal. Cars moving through traffic. People walking along sidewalks. Nobody knew the storm happening inside my chest. But I knew one thing now. Confronting Lily immediately would be a mistake. If I walked in tonight screaming, what would happen? She'd deny it. Cry. Gaslight me. Maybe even warn Ryan. And then the truth would disappear. No. I needed evidence. Real evidence. The kind that destroys lies completely. The kind that leaves no room for excuses. That evening I drove home slowly. The sky was turning orange with sunset when I pulled into our driveway. Ryan's house was visible 3 homes down the street. His truck sat parked outside. Seeing it made my hands tight around the steering wheel. For years, we had waved at each other like friendly neighbors. We had grilled burgers together. Watched football games. Shared beers. And all that time, he had been sleeping with my wife. I stepped out of the car and walked toward the house. Inside, Ethan's laughter echoed through the hallway. Daddy, he shouted as soon as he saw me. He ran into my arms and hugged my legs. And for a moment, the anger inside me softened. Because none of this was his fault. Not even a little. I picked him up and kissed his forehead. Hey, buddy. The smell of spaghetti filled the kitchen. Lily stood at the stove stirring a pot. She turned around and smiled. That same beautiful smile that used to make my day better. Hey, she said warmly. For a brief second, I studied her face. Looking for guilt. Fear. Anything. But she looked perfectly normal. Dinner's almost ready, she said. I nodded slowly. Then Ethan said something that made the room suddenly feel smaller. Daddy. Yeah. He pointed toward the street through the window. Funny uncle lives over there. My heart stopped. Lily's spoon clattered against the pot. Too loud. Too sudden. I followed Ethan's finger. He was pointing directly toward Ryan's house. And that's when Lily's voice cut in sharply. Ethan, honey, go wash your hands before dinner. Her tone was too quick. Too nervous. Ethan jumped down and ran to the bathroom. Silence filled the kitchen. For the first time all day, Lily looked directly at me. And I looked back. Neither of us spoke. But in that quiet moment, something shifted. Because for the first time, I think she realized. I knew. Not everything. Not yet. But enough. And the way her eyes flickered with panic told me one thing very clearly. My wife had secrets. And she was suddenly terrified. That those secrets were about to explode. Dinner that night felt like sitting inside a glass box, slowly filling with water. Every sound felt louder. Every movement heavier. Ethan happily slurped spaghetti while talking about dinosaurs and cartoons, completely unaware that the two adults sitting across from him were silently locked in a war neither of them had officially started. Lily barely ate. She kept glancing at me when she thought I wasn't looking. But I was watching everything. The nervous tapping of her fingers. The way she avoided eye contact. The forced smile when Ethan made a joke. For 8 months, she had been lying to me. But tonight, she was the one afraid. And strangely, that gave me power. I stayed calm. Too calm. How was lunch with Jessica today? I asked casually while cutting my food. It was the same friend she always claimed to meet during the day. Lily blinked. Oh, good. She looked down at her plate. We just talked and caught up. I nodded slowly. What restaurant? Her fork froze for half a second. Then she said, that little cafe downtown. I leaned back slightly. Which one? For the first time, I saw real panic flash across her face. Why are you asking so many questions? She said with a small nervous laugh. I shrugged. Just curious. She didn't answer. Instead, she forced a smile toward Ethan. Sweetie, finish your food. The conversation died there. But inside my mind, every lie she told was another nail sealing the coffin of our marriage. Later that night, after Ethan was asleep, Lily came into the bedroom. I was already lying in bed scrolling through my phone. Or at least pretending to. She changed into her pajamas quietly. The room felt thick with tension. Finally, she spoke. You've been acting strange today. I looked up. How? I don't know, distant. She sat on the edge of the bed. Did something happen at work? For a moment, I just stared at her. At the woman I had trusted with my entire life. The woman who had kissed another man in our living room just hours earlier. No, I said calmly, work's fine. She studied my face carefully. Like she was trying to read something hidden beneath the surface. But I gave her nothing. After a few seconds, she nodded slowly. Okay. Then she turned off the lamp and laid down beside me. Normally, she would cuddle against me. But tonight, she stayed on her side of the bed. A few inches farther than usual. And in that quiet darkness, I realized something important. She was afraid. Not guilty. Afraid. The next morning, I left for work at my usual time. 7:45 a.m. Lily kissed my cheek goodbye at the door. The same routine we had done for years. Have a good day, she said softly. You too. Ethan waved from the couch. Bye, Daddy. I smiled and waved back. Then I stepped outside. But instead of driving away, I parked my car 2 streets over. And waited. My heart pounded like a drum. This was the moment I needed confirmation. Not from recordings. Not from suspicion. But from reality. At 8:02 a.m. Lily's car left the driveway. Just like every weekday. She usually dropped Ethan at preschool before doing whatever she claimed to do during the day. 10 minutes later, I drove back toward the house. The street looked quiet. Normal. Ryan's truck was gone. Probably at work. But I knew something now. Something the cameras hadn't shown. Ryan didn't always arrive immediately. Sometimes there was a gap. Sometimes an hour. Sometimes more. Which meant one thing. He might have a key. The thought made my stomach twist. I parked near the corner where I could see both houses. Then I waited. The minutes crawled. 8:30. 9:00. 9:45. Finally, at 10:12 am, Ryan's black truck rolled slowly into the street. My heart started hammering. He didn't park at his own house. Instead, he pulled directly into my driveway, like he had done it 1,000 times before. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Ryan stepped out of the truck, wearing jeans and a casual button-up shirt. He looked relaxed, comfortable, like this was just another normal visit. Then he walked toward my front door. Without knocking. Without hesitation. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a key, and unlocked my house. I felt something inside my chest snap. That key. I had given it to him 2 years ago when we went to Florida for a week. Just in case of emergencies, I had said. He had smiled. Of course, man. Now he used that same key to walk into my home. To sleep with my wife. My breathing became slow. Controlled. Because rage without control is useless. But revenge. Revenge requires patience. Ryan disappeared inside. The door closed behind him. I checked the time. 10:14 a.m. Now came the next part of my plan. I pulled out my phone, opened the security app, and tapped live view. The living room camera flickered on. For a few seconds, the room was empty. Then Lily walked into frame. She wasn't wearing the clothes she left the house in earlier. She had changed. Now she wore a short summer dress. Her hair was down. Makeup fresh. Like she had been preparing for this moment. Ryan stepped into the frame behind her. Smiling, he wrapped his arms around her waist. She laughed softly and kissed him right in front of the camera. The same camera she had completely forgotten about. Ryan whispered something in her ear. She smiled and said something back. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see everything. Their bodies pressed together, his hands moving along her back, her fingers running through his hair, like they were two lovers who had all the time in the world. And that's when I noticed something else. Something that made the situation even darker. Lily looked nervous. She kept glancing toward the hallway, toward Ethan's room. Ryan noticed. He laughed and kissed her neck. Then I saw Lily mouth the words clearly. Relax, he's at preschool. Ryan grinned and said something that made my blood turn to ice. Even without audio, I could read his lips. Good, I hate when the kid interrupts. Silence filled my car. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. At the two people destroying my family inside my own house. But then, something unexpected happened. Ryan suddenly looked directly toward the camera. His eyes narrowed, like he had just noticed something. My heart jumped. He stepped closer to Lily and pointed upward toward the corner of the living room, toward the camera. And slowly, Lily turned her head. Her eyes followed his finger. And when she saw the small black lens mounted near the ceiling, her entire face went white. She froze. Ryan stepped back slightly. The room went silent. And then Lily whispered something I could read perfectly from her lips. Oh my God. Her hand flew to her mouth. Because in that moment, she realized something terrifying. Someone could have been watching them. At any time. And she had no idea. That someone was her husband. For a moment, nobody moved. Even through the camera feed on my phone, I could feel the panic filling the room. Lily stood frozen in the center of the living room, staring up at the camera like it was a loaded gun pointed directly at her. Ryan looked confused at first, then suspicious. He stepped closer to the wall and squinted at the lens. Relax, he said, waving a hand dismissively. I couldn't hear it, but I could clearly read his lips. Those things are probably off. Lily shook her head quickly. No, she mouthed back. Her breathing looked fast. Nervous. She grabbed Ryan's arm and pulled him slightly away from the camera's view. They started whispering. Arguing. Ryan glanced at the camera again. Then he walked over and reached up toward it. My heart jumped. For a second, I thought he might unplug it. But instead, he simply tilted it slightly upward. Not enough to disable it completely. Just enough to move their bodies out of the main frame. Amateur mistake. Because the microphone still captured movement in the room. And part of the couch remained visible. I watched them sit down just outside the center view. Ryan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Lily looked like she might throw up. Even without sound, their body language told me everything. She was panicking. Ryan was annoyed. Finally, Lily stood up and walked back into view. She looked straight at the camera again, her eyes scanning it. Thinking. Calculating. I could almost hear the thoughts racing through her mind. Has he seen this? Does he know? When was the last time the footage was checked? She grabbed Ryan's hand and pulled him toward the hallway. A few seconds later, they disappeared from the living room. And I knew exactly where they were going. My bedroom. The one we shared. The one where she slept beside me every night pretending to love me. I closed the live feed. I had seen enough for today. Because now I knew two things. First, the affair was real. Not a misunderstanding. Not a mistake. A full relationship. Second, they had just realized the camera existed. Which meant from this moment forward, they would become careful. Smarter. Harder to catch. But that didn't matter anymore. Because I already had what I needed. That evening when I arrived home, Lily was waiting. Not in the kitchen. Not cooking dinner. She was sitting on the couch. Right beneath the camera. Like she wanted to make sure I saw her. Ethan played on the floor with his toy cars. The moment I walked in, she stood up quickly. Her smile looked tight. Vorst. Hey, she said. I nodded and set my keys down. Hey. The silence between us felt heavier than usual. Like both of us were standing in the middle of a battlefield, pretending nothing had happened. Ethan ran over and hugged my leg. Daddy. I picked him up and kissed his head. How was preschool? Good, we painted dinosaurs. I smiled. Nice. Then Lily spoke again. So, how was work today? Her eyes studied my face carefully, looking for any hint, any sign that I knew. But I kept my voice calm. Busy. She nodded slowly. Same here. A lie. Another lie stacked on top of hundreds. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. Then I said something simple. Something that made her shoulders tense instantly. I checked the security cameras today. The silence that followed felt like a thunderclap. Behind me, I could hear Ethan's toy car rolling across the floor. But Lily didn't move. Didn't breathe. Slowly, I turned around. She stood there like a statue. Eyes wide. Face pale. What do you mean? She asked. I took a sip of water. Just routine stuff. Her voice cracked slightly. Why? I shrugged. Just curious. Her eyes flicked up toward the camera. Then back to me. And in that exact moment, I saw it. Pure fear. Because she didn't know what I had seen. Or how much. And that uncertainty was eating her alive. Later that night, after Ethan was asleep again, Lily came into the bedroom. But this time, she didn't look calm. She looked desperate. Can we talk? She said quietly. I leaned against the headboard. About what? She hesitated, then sat down on the edge of the bed. Earlier, when you said you checked the cameras. I waited. She swallowed. Did you see anything? There it was. The question she was terrified to ask. I studied her face for a long moment. Then I answered carefully. What do you think I saw? Her breathing became shallow. I don't know. I tilted my head slightly. Are you worried about something? Her eyes filled with moisture. Guilt. Fear. Panic. Finally, she whispered something that almost sounded like a confession. There's something I need to explain. I raised an eyebrow. Explain what? She looked down at her hands. Her voice shaking. Ryan, he's been helping me with some things. I almost laughed. Helping. That was the word she chose. Helping. I leaned forward slowly. And how exactly has Ryan been helping you, Lily? Her lips trembled. She opened her mouth. But before she could answer, something unexpected happened. From outside the house, a loud truck door slammed. Both of us turned our heads toward the window. Headlights swept across the bedroom wall. A vehicle had just pulled into our driveway. At nearly 10 p.m., Lily's face drained of color instantly, because she knew exactly whose truck made that sound. And when we looked out the window together, there it was, Ryan's black truck, parked directly in front of my house. And he was walking toward the front door, like he belonged there. The moment we saw Ryan's truck pull into the driveway, the air inside the bedroom turned ice cold. Lily's entire body stiffened. Her eyes widened in pure horror, because she knew something Ryan didn't. I was home, and I knew. Downstairs, the doorbell rang. Once, then again. Louder. More impatient. Lily, Ryan's voice called faintly from outside the door. Hearing his voice inside my house felt like someone scraping glass across my spine. Lily stood frozen beside the window, her hands trembling. "Why is he here?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer. The doorbell rang again. This time, Ethan's small voice drifted down the hallway from his bedroom. "Mommy, someone's here." Lily quickly wiped her face and rushed toward the door. "Stay here," she whispered urgently. But I followed anyway. Slowly, calmly, because the moment I had been preparing for had finally arrived. By the time we reached the living room, Lily was already standing near the front door. Ryan knocked again. "Lily, you there?" She looked at me. Desperation filled her eyes. "Please don't make a scene," she whispered. I almost smiled. A scene. 8 months of betrayal, and she was worried about a scene. I leaned casually against the wall. "Go ahead," I said calmly. "Open the door." Her hand shook as she reached for the handle. The lock clicked. The door slowly opened. Ryan stood on the porch, wearing the same confident expression he always had. But the moment his eyes landed on me, standing inside the house, that confidence shattered. His smile disappeared instantly. "Oh, I." For the first time since I'd known him. Ryan looked nervous. "Hey man," he said awkwardly. I crossed my arms. "Ryan." Silence hung between us. Lily stood between the two of us, like someone caught in the middle of a burning bridge. Ryan tried to recover. "I didn't know you were home," he said. I nodded slowly. "Yeah." His eyes flicked toward Lily. Then back to me. "I was just, stopping by to see if you needed help with that fence project you mentioned." The lie was so weak, it almost hurt to hear. I let out a quiet breath. "Ryan." "Yeah." "Come inside." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "You sure?" "Absolutely." He stepped into the house slowly. The moment he crossed the doorway, I closed the door behind him. Click. The sound echoed through the living room. Ethan suddenly appeared at the end of the hallway in his dinosaur pajamas. "Funny uncle." He ran toward Ryan happily. My chest tightened. Ryan forced a smile and crouched down. "Hey, buddy." Ethan hugged him, like he had done many times before. That moment alone was enough to break something deep inside me. I gently picked Ethan up. "Hey, champ," I said softly. "It's bedtime, remember." "But." "Tomorrow," I said firmly. He pouted but nodded. "Okay." I carried him back to his room and tucked him into bed. When I returned to the living room, Ryan and Lily were standing in silence. Both of them looked like prisoners waiting for the verdict. I walked to the kitchen counter and picked up my phone. Then I placed it on the table and pressed play. The security footage filled the screen. Ryan unlocking my front door. Ryan kissing Lily. Ryan lifting Ethan into the air. Ryan's voice silently forming those words. "Good, I hate when the kid interrupts." The room went completely silent. Ryan's face drained of color. Lily covered her mouth with her hand. I looked at them both. Calm. Controlled. Because the anger had already burned itself out earlier that day. Now there was only clarity. 8 months of lies playing out on a small phone screen. Finally, Ryan spoke. "Man, I can explain." I raised my hand. "No." He stopped immediately. I looked directly at Lily. "Do you love him?" Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean for this to happen. Not what I asked. Silence. Then she whispered the truth. Yes. The word landed like a hammer. But strangely, it didn't hurt as much as I expected. Maybe because the worst part had already happened. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. Look, I know this is bad, he said carefully. But Lily and we didn't plan this. I laughed quietly. 8 months. And he thought that sentence would fix things. I picked up the phone and paused the video. Then I said something that made both of them look confused. Relax. They blinked. Relax, Ryan repeated. I nodded. Yeah. I leaned back against the counter. Because I'm not here to fight. Their confusion deepened. Ryan frowned. Then what? I looked directly at him. Tomorrow morning, my lawyer files for divorce. Lily gasped softly. I continued. The footage is already backed up. Ryan's face tightened. And since you used a key, I gave you to enter my home and sleep with my wife, while my son was present. I paused. Ryan's eyes widened slowly. My lawyer says the civil case is going to be very interesting. Now Ryan looked truly scared. Man, come on. I cut him off again. Also, I turned toward Lily. You can move in with him. Her head snapped up. What? I shrugged. You clearly want to. Tears streamed down her face now. But Ethan stays with me. My voice was calm. Final. Ryan looked between us both like he had just realized the situation was far worse than he expected. Because affairs feel exciting in secret. But they look very different in courtrooms. And responsibility. In custody battles. Lily collapsed onto the couch crying. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. The confident neighbor I once trusted was gone. Now he just looked like a man who had destroyed his own life. I picked up my car keys. Where are you going? Lily asked weakly. I walked toward the door. To stay at my brother's place tonight. I paused before opening the door. Then I looked back at them both one final time. You two deserve each other. Ryan said nothing. Lily just cried. But as I stepped outside into the cool night air, I felt something surprising. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Relief. Because sometimes the most painful truths are the ones that finally set you free. And behind me, inside the house that used to be my home, 2 people stood in silence, realizing far too late that the game they thought they were playing in secret had just destroyed everything